And welcome to another edition of Spits and Suds. Thank you so much for joining us this holiday season. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan. Got a good one for you today because we've had a lot of questions regarding it, and joining us to talk about LTIR, otherwise known as Long-Term Injured Reserve, and Stars possibilities from NHL.com, and she's also the managing editor of Defending Big D. Let's give a stick tap first. We started Spits and Suds with the motto to grow this great game of hockey in DFW. Well, long before Spits and Suds, Taylor was a massive part of Defending Big D, and Defending Big D has been there for a long time, so I wanted to pump her tires. She does a great job with NHL.com as well, and we bring her on. Hi, Taylor.
Wow, what an intro. I should talk to you more often. I like the hype.
I mean, you deserve it because there are so many, we were just talking about this. There's so many people in this Stars community because of their love of hockey that are contributors and trying their best to kind of grow this great game and spread the knowledge, spread the love of this team, talk about acquisitions. I really do feel as though if you looked as far as coverage of Dallas Stars history, obviously Mike Heika for all his years being like, you know, one of the senior reporters for all of the NHL now. But Defending Big D to me has been a staple in Dallas-Fort Worth for their coverage of this team.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to make it work. Ever since we were axed inexplicably by Vox Media, we've gone independent, and it's not without its challenges, but we're still here, and as long as I can afford to, we will continue to be here.
Heck yeah, and we will continue to promote you. Okay. I kind of took a step back, Taylor, and I don't know if you felt the same, because as soon as the Tyler Seguin news came out, I started to get tweets about who we going to get. And I kind of felt bad, A, because Seguin was having such a great season, B, the impact he has on the room. And I kind of wanted to let it rest for a day or so before talking about a potential wish list and going through what Stars fans have to understand, because I think we need to stick tap the actual person that was a major part of the Duchesne, Marchment, Seguin line, and that Tyler Seguin's going to be a massive loss no matter who they acquire.
And the thing about it is that it's not just one person that can come in and fill that role. You're going to need, whether it be an internal candidate, whether it be guys that are currently underperforming on the roster to step up some more. Looking at you, Jason Robertson, you're going to need multiple avenues to fill the hole that Seguin, and his performance have had this year. And the part that I think a lot of people might underestimate is actually kind of what you touched on, that leadership in the room. With Joe Pavelski retiring from the NHL last year, that created a little bit of a leadership hole in the team. And Pete DeBoer has actually talked to us, from the start of the season about how Seguin, has really stepped up in that regard. And, even Seguin himself has kind of jokingly been like, I guess I'm the elder statesman on the team now. And, and he's alluded to conversations he's had with guys like Logan Stankoven or Wyatt Johnston when they're going through goal droughts or scoring doesn't seem to be coming for them. And, because he's been there and he's seen it all and he's had those same experiences and really has stepped up into the vocal leadership side of the void that Pavelski's left. So it's kind of a tough loss all around for this organization.
Absolutely is. And as we move forward with the move or moves that Jim Nill and the organization make, the first point that I wanted to let Stars fans know is that when you look at potential players, I think you have to look at the length of their contract, because I think a lot of people look and say, well, I'll take this player. Well, if this player has multiple years left, the Tyler Seguin situation goes away after this year. So LTIR is just an existing thing for this season. And I say that, Taylor, because as far as unrestricted free agents with the Stars next year, you have Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Dodonoff, Sam Steele. You have some good ones. I mean, when I just name those players, I think the majority of us would want those players back.
I don't know if I agree on every one of those.
Okay, let's
but
discuss then. I mean, this is plus Wyatt
I mean,
Johnston is a restricted free agent. That's massive.
yeah, and that's the thing is, and I don't envy Jim Nill in his role as general manager of this team. He has to not only balance the short term, what do we do about this season? But he also has to balance the midterm. What does it or our cap situation look like in the next 1 to 2 seasons, but also long term. And so, and I think there was even a point of discussion that could have been had prior to the start of this season of you've got Logan Stankoven who's going to need a deal. You're going to have Wyatt Johnston who's going to need a deal.
Yeah.
You've got Jason Robertson who's going to come off of his major deal as an arbitration eligible RFA. Ottinger's only signed to a bridge, or well, I guess he got his new one.
Yeah.
And then but you start going on the line, and Bork's going to need a new deal. Harley's going to need a new deal. There's a lot of money that it may feel like the Stars have a lot of money to play with, and maybe they do in the very, very near term, but that's a lot of money that's actually committed out. And so if Jim Nill is looking at deals, there's kind of 2 ways he could go with it. It's, can we find a pending unrestricted free agent that's unlikely to sign or to re-sign on the team that they're on, and then make a deal early, kind of a trade deadline acquisition, but just a little bit earlier than most? Or, if we go out and try to acquire somebody that has term left on their deal, what is the sacrificial lamb going back the other way? Because the numbers just are not going to work in the long term, knowing all the contracts that you're going to have to sign over the next 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right. I have to, since you mentioned it, of those names that I listed, who do you want to take off the list?
Oh, I don't know if Evgeny Dodonov is one that I would necessarily be looking to re-sign. And that's kind of just watching him every game. I know that Pete loves him. I know that, he relies on him in a lot of ways to kind of be a plug in whatever spaces, he feels he needs to jump a line or whatever, but I don't know that he's going to fit in the long term. He's getting up there in age. He's definitely not the most fleet of foot skater anymore. I mean, yeah, he does some stuff every once in a while where he has a flash, but I don't know if the consistency is there for if I am a general manager, and again, glad I'm not Jim Nill, but if I was the GM, I would probably be thinking between the Borks and the Becks and the, and the Strangis and some of the guys you have still down in the AHL. I don't know that I would be looking at him as another long-term solution.
One of the things I tell Stars fans is they mention names that they would like to acquire, and I'm all about that. I love trade talk. I think it's fun, and what I like about it is that means that someone has an active passion to improve their team, and so they want to play general manager. And when you have a fan base that wants to play general manager, you have a large fan base. So I love the trade deadline, and I love talking about these things. But one of the things that I caution people on, Taylor, is to give. I mean, to get, you have to give. And I think that is a forgotten item as far as, oh, we want this person. Well, what are you willing to give up? So I ask you, I'm going to name some names, and are you willing to give these people up? Let's start with Maverick Bork.
No.
Okay. Liam Bichel.
No.
A first-round draft pick.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So
you're in the window. You've got to go for it this year. Your team, your core is not getting any younger. You've got guys on the team like Jamie Benn and Tyler, and even though Tyler's not playing right now, but Tyler Seguin, Matt Duchene, who, it feels like now is the time. If there's one asset I'd be willing to sacrifice the future on, it would probably be a first-round pick.
Okay. Okay. What about last year's first-round pick for the Stars? Hemming.
Ooh.
Tough one.
That's a tough one. I wouldn't give him up necessarily in a just win now kind of move. It would have to be for a player that I feel like is going to be part of the solution for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, because I think Hemming has a lot of potential. But you also, like I said earlier, you have a lot of forwards or a lot of guys in general that are going to need new contracts. And so you do kind of have to balance of, are we even going to have the roster space for him? And if he comes in and performs at a first round level, then like who's getting squeezed out at that point? Like it becomes a numbers game at a certain point. And so that one, maybe.
Got it.
Yes, caveated with as long as it's not for just somebody who's going to walk in free agency at the end of the summer.
And that's the case with some of the players I'm going to name. Let's start in Toronto. Now, Toronto, to me, wouldn't necessarily be in the game of shipping some of their best players out, just for the simple fact, although they are cap-strapped with all of their players, they're playing really well this year. And what does that tell the fan base? If you're getting picks in return, yes, you're dropping a salary, and that salary would be Mitch Marner, makes over $10 million a year, a UFA after this year, but 25 games played, 36 points, plus 8 on the ice. I mean, that would be an absolute weapon. But once again, that's just throwing things out there. I just don't see why Toronto would pull a trigger like that.
In my opinion, I feel like Marner only gets dealt if Toronto completely collapses down the stretch and they know there's no chance of re-signing him. For my money, I do feel like that's a negotiation that could get really ugly, similar to Jeremy Swayman's new deal with Boston this past summer, and it spilled out into the public space. But I still feel like they get it done, and I think Marner and Matthews are a duo that Toronto can't afford to split.
Yeah, yep, I agree. Here's one that I like, Taylor, and it's very affordable. Makes $5 million this year. Always around the puck, plays in shorthanded situations. Actually, scored a goal, shorthanded goal against the Stars. Mikael Granlund of the San Jose Sharks, UFA after this year. A KG veteran, played with the Wild for a number of years. I think Nashville as well. 27 games played, 29 points. I mean, he's a hustler. I just think he's kind of one of those Swiss Army knives that can play on multiple lines. And I don't think you would have to necessarily give up a lot. I think maybe a second and a fourth round pick might get this done.
For my money, that's the kind of move that I think Jim Nill would be most drawn to, unless there's with Nill, it's always going to be some guy that's never been out in the news is available and will come out of completely left field. But of all of the forwards I evaluated, and I'm going to say forwards because I am not sold that forward is what they actually need right now, but we can talk about that.
I love that because that was my next point, but go.
Yeah, Granlund would be a guy that, like you said, I don't know that you would have to part with a high number of assets, maybe a high second round pick with a B+ kind of prospect.
Yep.
San Jose is in a rebuild mode. Granlund is a very respected veteran. I don't buy that they want him around to teach the youngsters, whatever. No, they signed him so that they could flip him at the trade deadline and continue to store assets away to help in their rebuild, and draft picks go a long way when you are at the bottom of the table right now. So in my mind, that's the kind of deal that I think is the perfect fit for Dallas because you're not committed long-term. And I'm not to say that Granlund couldn't re-sign here, but if he doesn't, I don't think that you're killing your roster for next season either.
Yeah, I agree. And he fills multiple roles. That to me is at the top of the list. I think you brought up a great point. A lot of people think let's fill the void from Seguin, but it could also be used defensively. Before we finish forwards and then move on to defense, are there any other forwards that you're kind of looking at and then kind of shift to defense? What are you thinking? Because, you sounded like, maybe improving defense. And I'll add to that, I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Is Liam Bichsel the answer? Maybe call him up after the All-Star break.
Wow, that's a lot of questions.
It's a lot. I asked three of them at once. Yeah, you're right.
So in terms of forwards, I mean, I don't know. It feels like at this particular moment in the season, it's a little bit tougher to see what's going to shake loose. Obviously there are teams that are very apparently far out, the Chicago's, the San Jose's, the Anaheims of the world. Injuries have kind of happened. Trevor Zegras left the other night, and
Yeah, he would have been a good
he's
one.
always been kind of out in those trade rumors as available. Pittsburgh has basically said we're open for business, but they're not exactly out of it. So it feels like they're probably looking for more of what I would call a hockey trade, looking for a piece that fits them and giving up a piece that fits someone else, to better both teams equally. So somebody randomly threw out Evgeny Malkin, which, oh boy, that is a whole load of things between getting to, part ways with Sidney Crosby. And also, he's like the Pittsburgh guy. He's been there his entire career. And he would have to waive a no trade. And he has a big salary cap. He is I believe, a pending free agent at the end of the year. Like, could they go for something like that? Maybe. I don't know if I see it. I don't know that I see him leaving Pittsburgh. Um, so I mean, there's some other, there's bits and bobs around the edges, but for my money, I feel like this is a situation where you need to be looking at your quote unquote top line. Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, your consistency needs to be better. You need to be performing up to that level. You need to be putting the puck in the net more than you are right now. Jason Robertson, what are you doing? Why are you lost half the time? And then, it feels like Duchesne and Marchment have been they haven't really lost a step no matter who you put next to those two. So you hope that continues. You would expect some shooting regression from guys like Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven. Your defense as a whole hasn't really been scoring a whole heck of a lot. So you would hope that Harley and Miro continue to get up and moving. For my money, the weakness on this team is and always has been from the outstart good depth on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning guys that Pete DeBoer actually trusts to play. And I cannot imagine going into yet another playoff run where you look and say, anytime that third pairing is on the ice, they're going to get absolutely eaten alive by the other team. And that is where I feel like the need is. I do think that they would be probably giving some heavy consideration to, like you said, bringing Bishop up, playing him for a few games prior to the deadline.
Yep.
Like, get him in for a stretch of 5, 6, 7 games, see what you have, and then make your call from there of whether defense is the way to go. But for my money, I feel like defense is the obvious Achilles heel. I do truly believe that the offense can figure itself out, but I don't know about the defense.
I think Stars fans listening to this would understand why Taylor and I are saying, look for the expiring contracts first. I think that is the key if you want to play general manager, because then Jim Nill has the wiggle room after this year with the contracts coming up. I agree with you on the defenseman part of things. I think they certainly were hoping that Matt Dumba would, fill one of those roles, and it hasn't happened. I will say, and wanted to spend a second on this, Taylor, I really like Nils Lundqvist's game this year. I think he's been terrific. I think he's playing with a lot of confidence. I know the shots aren't going in, but he is getting shots on net, open looks, and I think defensively he's been pretty good. And you see the minutes going up, and that might be by default. However, certainly the confidence of Pete DeBoer has to have gone up a little to play him like he has been.
For sure. I do feel like there's a little bit of concern about just overall size on the back end.
Especially in the playoffs.
Exactly. When you get to the playoffs, I think for the regular season, what they have, the 6 they have probably, or 7 they have now, can get you there. Absolutely. It's the question of, but can they get you through the entire playoffs? And I think that, when Dallas does not play their best defensively, it's because they're not able to keep guys from getting around the net. But once somebody drops anchor there, it feels like it's almost impossible for them to box anybody out again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not part of some of those guys' games. Like Nils Lundqvist is not going to be the guy that's going to be nasty in front of the net. That's not his game. His game is puck possession, transition, getting the puck back up ice. That's what they need him to be able to do. But then you need somebody next to him that can maybe do the other part of defending that you might need. And so I think that's where I kind of come down to it. I don't know that I have necessarily a defenseman in mind for this, for Jim Nill to be targeting. I do think that they would probably need to see what they feel like they have on Bishop before they can go too far down that road. Some of the ones that I would maybe look at, it's tough because I think Chikrin in Washington could be that kind of, expiring contract, puck moving defenseman, has a little bit of bite to his game. But he's on a Washington Capitals team that's doing phenomenal this year. So are they going to be sellers? Probably not. So I don't know. There's a lot out there. But nothing on defense. It looks fairly thin, I would say, of targets. So that's one where I feel like it's much more likely to be a hockey trade.
Yeah.
For a young player that's maybe not in the best position or stuck behind some depth in an organization that they feel like they could have for a long term, or somebody who's vastly underproducing but maybe has a year left. But again, it's so hard to tell because there's so many teams that are still quote unquote in it right now or feel like they could get there with the right string of games. And so that's why it's kind of tough, the timing of this move. At the same time, I don't think that Jim Nill necessarily needs to make it immediately.
Right.
I don't think people need to be expecting that Jim Nill's going to make some move before their next home game on Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's going to be what's going to happen here. I think he's going to give his team a week or two. They've got a ton of home games here in December. See how they're kind of making it through that, see where the offense goes. And meanwhile, he'll be doing what he does every day, which is being in touch with other GMs, understanding their needs, understanding how they might be able to fit those needs and what they have available that might fit his own needs.
Another one with North Texas ties, used to live in Allen, Alec Martinez of the Chicago Blackhawks. Up there, 37 years old, but an expiring contract, defenseman, shot blocker. The question is how much is left in the tank, but you do have a lot of Stanley Cup experience coming to your team.
Sure. I think I would much prefer Alec Martinez 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would
but
too. Yeah.
Cards are dealt.
No, I understand. One of the things is that, and seriously, feel free to completely disagree with me, but Hockey News reporting via Larry Brooks of the New York Post, whether it's true or not, but the Rangers have made Ottawa Senators forward Brady Tkachuk their primary target. And to me, if
that is the stupidest rumor made up, there is not a chance that there is any sniff of truth to that. I mean, okay, cool. I could go out and say Dallas is coming out and their top target this year is Austin Matthews.
Right.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that it's possible. Doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen. Anybody can say anything about who you might target. It's kind of that whole shoot for the moon and maybe you land in the stars. Pun definitely intended there.
But that's an absolute wagon in return for Brady Tkachuk. You'd have to literally pull a wagon of prospects.
He's not available.
No.
He's not. There's not a chance he's actually available. That would be really stupid on Ottawa's part. Not to say that there aren't stupid GMs in the world, because we have seen some wild trades happen, but where you kind of scratch your head and go, what are they thinking and what direction are they now headed in? But you would be setting yourself back immensely
Yeah.
if you were Ottawa and getting rid of him.
Yeah.
Not a
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. Because
That's
every
stupid.
team wants a Kachuk. And what I mean by that is a scoring forward that can mix it up in front of the net, collects rebounds, great size, doesn't mind dropping the mitts, good team guys. Like the Kachucks are what every team a lot of times needs. That's why Florida went out and got him. They were missing that kind of feisty ingredient, and they traded a lot to Calgary in return. So yeah, I agree with you. I see him staying in Ottawa. Ottawa is one of those teams, Taylor, that every year I think they're going to be pretty good, and they just can't get it. I mean, just like this year, you think, all right, they finally have their goalie in Allmark. And,
Yep.
it just hasn't come together.
Not gotten great.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
but they do feel like they have a farm system that's coming up. They've been in the bottom of the East for a little bit now, so it feels like they're on an upward trajectory. Whether they get there this season or not, probably not. But they like, and that's why I say trading Kachuk would be the stupidest thing because you're finally, hopefully, going to be on the right track back to prominence and at least some kind of relevance in the playoff picture. But oh boy,
Yeah,
man, that
yeah,
hockey season, wow, it's a silly season. It started so early this year. If
absolutely.
it's me, and if you take New York Rangers GM at his word that basically our doors are open, there's no untouchable on her roster, essentially. I have heard rumblings that they're unhappy with Adam Fox, that they're unhappy with his performance, that he hasn't really lived up to his Norris season. If you're really looking to like really shake things up,
Oh,
hi.
I mean, that's your
I would
quarterback on
like
the
to
power
inquire
play.
about your former Norris
Yeah,
trophy winner.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But again, when it comes to these things, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. And the one thing I would always caution Stars fans on is this. Jim Nill is notoriously tight-lipped. He does not have a lot of leaks within the organization, within the hockey operations side. You are almost never going to hear about Dallas being connected with a move that actually follows through, right? So, and it's almost like basically people are saying, "Oh, hearing that Dallas is interested in X player," and then 2 minutes later, it's like Dallas has acquired X player, and you're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
So like those things don't typically get out there. I feel like the times when Dallas has been associated with players in the past couple of seasons, it's been either somebody who says, well, that seems like a good fit. And so they're saying, it seems like, that would be a good move for Dallas to make. Or it's some fan who's like, hey, I would like to trade you, a bag of pucks for this great guy. That almost never happens. And then, or the third thing is, did Dallas inquire about them? Sure, they probably did, but every team does due diligence on anybody. Like they have scouts in the professional ranks that literally are at games every night across the NHL, and they are constantly just keeping an eye on players because you never know when things may change or somebody becomes unexpectedly available.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And the other piece is that Tom Gillardy has to agree to another big contract. Now, he has spent money and got to give him a lot of credit. We need to look back and say this franchise was bankrupt and they weren't able to make the deals. They had to get NHL approval, and kudos to Gillardy making, the Stars one of those teams that's up against the cap, and that means they're spending money, but that conversation needs to happen as well. Did want to just throw this in. We don't necessarily have to talk about it, but Tijagilna, the son of Jerome, with a tough injury, he'll be out the rest of the year. Utah's top prospect. So, tough news. It's been a tough year for Utah as far as injuries. They have a very talented roster. I think we saw that the other night. But losing Marino and Dursey on defense, and now their top prospect gone. It's just it hasn't worked out necessarily. When that team gets healthy, Taylor, I think they're going to be pretty darn good in the Central.
Oh, for sure. They're one that I look at as, they're prepping themselves to be good for a little while.
Yep.
In the very short term. But every team can look at that and say, Dallas can say, oh, well, now Tyler Seguin is out, 4 to 6 months. We've lost him for the season. Woe is us. Look at these injuries. But if you look at what Colorado has been through with some of their big guys that have been out, it seems like every game they get a guy back and then another one gets hurt. And sometimes that's just how these seasons go. And that's why I say it's a tough spot in this part of the year, because I think for some teams who've been relatively healthy, they haven't hit that stretch where they've had some guys, miss some games. And then you really truly at that point get a sense of, can we still do this? Do we have the depth that we need to get there, make the playoffs? And then as guys get healthier, we're just going to get better and better. Obviously, with a team like Colorado, the answer is probably. And so that's why you haven't seen them do well. They're trying to fix their goaltending, but I don't. It's actually really. Oh man, I mean, I love Scott Wedgwood, the person.
He
but
wins games, but he lets in goals.
Yeah, I mean, well, and he even said when he was here, we had this long talk one day in the locker room about statistics. And basically he's like, the only statistic that matters to me is wins. How often is my team winning when I'm in net? If I let in 4 goals, but we score 5, I don't care. I was like, but I know other people might.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's just, he's a guy that just always, it's more about, does the team have success? And as long as the team has success, then I've done my job. And I don't think that that's an unfair mentality for a goaltender to have, because you also don't want a guy who's going to get bent out of shape when, his defenseman blow a coverage, and, then he lets in an easy one from an angle that never should have been allowed to begin with. But it's because then it's like, oh, my stats, like you don't want that either. There's probably a healthy balance between the two.
Yep.
But so I don't know that, but I don't know that Wedgwood is the answer for Colorado. So you have to expect that they're going to make some kind of move for some kind of goaltender that can literally stop anything for them. And so that's the other thing that I think Jim Nill's going to have to be looking at is, what are the other teams around us? What are their situations? What are they potentially going out and going after? Because you also have to be cognizant of, are you looking for the same thing that 10 of the 16 playoff teams in this league are also looking for?
Yeah.
And in some ways, the Seguin injury now gives him the flexibility to not have to wait until they've accrued enough salary cap over the course of the season with the daily cap accrual. And if you want a whole discourse on that, please Google it, because it is way too nuanced for a 5-second explanation. But essentially, if they find a move, they could go ahead and make it and go ahead and utilize and activate the long-term IR, or put Tyler Seguin on long-term IR at the moment when they need that cap, and then they can exceed their cap ceiling.
Yeah.
But they don't have to do that move immediately, and they're going to continue to try to not use it because there are some things that also come into play at the end of the season of bonuses and guys hitting, performance bonuses or whatever they may be that are built into the contracts that count towards your cap. And so that's another thing that people don't realize that Jim Nill has to also balance out is, what cap would we have to carry forward into next season because of those bonuses? Because we were at the salary cap, ceiling this year because of long-term IR. All of that gets pushed into next year, and those are less dollars you have to spend next season.
Yep.
So it is a tight wire that these guys have to walk every day with this cap. And God bless every single capologist. Mark Janko for the Dallas Stars is that guy. If you don't know him, if you ever get a chance to meet him, give him a high five, offer him a beer, because he more than earns whatever he makes each season, having to deal with all of that.
So tell us, the Spits and Suds community, how we can support defending Big D. What are the best ways?
I mean, honestly, just read us.
Okay.
That's what it comes down to. Just click on our articles and give us give us clicks. Obviously the nice notes on social media are great. The appreciation for doing something that we do not get paid for. Actually, I pay money to do this, through paying for the hosting of the server and the server space, and having somebody on the technical side to make sure that the comment section is working. And if it goes down at 3 o'clock because the Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights decided to have a line brawl in the middle of the night, somebody can jump in and help with those things. That all costs me money.
Yeah.
And I do it because I appreciate all the kind words, but I do it because I know that the Dallas Stars fan base deserves a community and a place where they can have the fan voice heard.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do what we do. But it's not an easy feat. It's no easy task. And it's been pretty hard the last 2 years being completely independent. So, and we try to do it where we don't have to turn on ads or, make the reading experience terrible. So the best way that you can support us is by really just truly supporting us. And a kind word every once in a while would be greatly appreciated.
There you have it, Spits and Suds listeners. Pump her tires as much as you can. And click on defendingbigd.com. And if you see it on social media, a retweet certainly helps to spread the word about defendingbigd.com. And also after the game, specifically when they're at home, you can read Taylor on NHL.com. You are awesome. Thank you so much for this LTIR conversation, the wish list, talking about contracts that are up. This has been very informative. Always appreciate you having you on.
Excellent. Thanks for having me anytime.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for another edition of Spits and Suds. Thank you so much for your support of Spits and Suds, and we will talk to you soon with another episode. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan. Have a great day, everyone.